Welcome back to the Karate Combat Show, our first official episode. We've got a special guest, Matty Stevens, all the way from Adelaide. How are you, Matty?
Ross, how are you guys?
Was
Oh,
Shane hates all I actually don't mind.
yeah,
So Matty the Package Stevens, has been doing karate. I used to compete same time as him back in the day, and then he went to some taekwondo, had some success there. Pivoted to kickboxing, Muay Thai, had a lot of success there. Actually, Matty, that's how I've seen a couple of your fights, the kickboxing ones, really against some great fighters and really good job. So I was really impressed. And then most recently, Karate Combat Season 4, the first Australian to compete at Karate Combat, and thankfully you won. So that was good.
Yeah, pressure was on.
Yeah, yeah. So far 1 from 1. How was it? What was your impression about how the whole fight thing?
Yeah, well, look, first, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be your first guest. In terms of Karate Combat, the one thing that really struck me was that how professional the organization was. It was only sort of 3 or 4 years old. Like it's relatively new in its infancy.
yeah.
These organizations that have been around for a long time have a lot of history, and they learn from their mistakes. The promotions tend to get better every time. But I was just struck at how even in its sort of fourth year, Karate Combat, and it had started just prior to COVID as well. So you'd have to remember that there was all that shutdown in that time. Like things were dancing around. So I didn't know what to expect, but I was pleasantly surprised at how well everything run, how much money they sunk into the show. Like it was in the Universal Studios backlot. There was this huge LED wall. Like they definitely didn't cut corners. So
Yeah, no, it looks amazing. I mean, their backdrops,
It's awesome. Yeah,
I was just talking about the Okinawa one that I was watching. That looks sick as well. Like all of the ones they do, they've got just
it's
great
well
stuff.
thought out. Like it's not
yeah,
amateur, and you can tell with the production values and how much money they spend just on the production. It's not just a couple of video cameras. It's like proper graphics.
Like what I was interested in is obviously because when we're doing karate, it's just on mats, and you've done a lot of Muay Thai fights, but that's a ring. And myself, I'm doing MMA now, and the cage, it's different to fight in the cage. You've got to use the cage to get up, and so obviously you hadn't trained in a pit. I'm guessing you didn't make your own home pit.
no.
So what was it like in the pit, and was there stuff that you learnt after the fight that you wish maybe you could have used it a bit differently, or just tell us what it's like in the pit, really?
The pit. So I think I fought Saturday night. We went there on the Friday night. They took us there, and we got to kind of go in the pit and have a feel around and see how it was. And my first impression of the pit was that it was a lot deeper than I kind of was expecting, and it really kind of makes you feel like you're in this kind of sunken pit because the walls. Whereas in a cage, you can kind of still see around, although it does feel enclosed. This there's no transparency. It's just you feel locked in. What I found though was that the walls were a little bit steeper than I was expecting. I think they were slightly maybe steeper than 45 degrees.
Oh, okay.
Oh, right, okay.
And the mats that they'd used I was expecting them to be a bit softer, a bit more like BJJ mats, but they weren't. They were very, very firm, not quite as sort of a bit firmer than kind of a boxing ring.
Yeah.
So there wasn't as
Really?
much give there.
Oh.
Yeah, it was really strange. I felt like
that.
if you got taken down and dumped on your head, then you'd be in a bit of trouble. And I think actually,
Like the floors and the walls,
yeah,
the same. Yeah, right.
So
Okay.
the walls are a little bit softer, but there's not a lot of give in there, and yeah. So the other thing as well was that I thought to myself, like while I was warming up, like I could definitely use the edge here a little bit and kind of bounce off it, but that didn't end up eventuating in the fight. But I definitely think that if something that I do again, that's what I'll definitely look to exploit, because you're right. there's not many opportunities to train in a pit, and if you can find any advantage possible by using the pit, or using like you would use a cage, then because in kickboxing you do use the ring, the ropes, to avoid. Whereas back in the old karate days, there was nothing. It was just a mat.
You step out, you're out. Because I'm thinking, like, obviously with the pit, it does push you back towards your opponent, but at the same time you're getting that little bit of height advantage.
Yes, yeah.
So
and it's the right kind of angle that you can step up a little bit, and you can get that height advantage. Whereas it's not too steep that you can't push off it, and it's not shallow enough.
And also you get that extra pushback as well as they're coming forward. So you can get out of the range a little bit earlier, a bit better. And if you fall over, It's not like you're going out.
Well, the issue with that is that you're not technically grounded if your back's on the pit wall.
Yeah.
So you can still get kicked in the head or knee now in the head. And then obviously if you do have your back on the pit, you kind of have to then get your hand to sprawl a little bit. So you're in a little bit of danger. So you got to try and
balance that.
Yeah, you got to balance that. But you're definitely right. It is an advantage.
So just with that knee, you're talking about the knee. So when you did your fight, did they bring in the knee rule already?
No, there was no knees.
Right?
There was no knees.
Yeah. And so that suited you anyway, right? With the Muay Thai.
Mate, I love knees to the head, especially in that kind of clinch where what was happening to me in my fight was the guy I'd have his head locked on and he'd be pummeling to the body like this, which is where I normally do a jumping double knee right under the chin.
Yeah.
And I had to kind of fight that, instinct to do it. Yeah. And so after a while, I just started throwing hooks in the clinch, which worked. But, so here's the thing, in Muay Thai or kickboxing, that's a big no-no. If someone grabs you by the head, you don't drop your hands and pummel because you get knee to the face, right? And also in Muay Thai, that sort of pummeling doesn't score at all. Like it's just a useless thing. But I watched back the Karate Combat commentary and they were talking that up like it was this kind of, really
well, I mean, it's free
important
hits.
technique. Yeah, I mean, it is exactly right.
Free hits, you're scoring.
It's free hits.
And I guess like we were talking about off camera before about how rule sets make fights. If you can't knee to the head, then you can't knee to the head. So you're going to use that. But if you can, and obviously the rules have changed.
Yeah, and so that's the thing now is that you can knee to the head, you can knee to the face, you can knee to the body as well. So that changes that pummeling in the clinch. It also changes people shooting. You can't shoot. Whereas before you could shoot and take down. If you go to shoot and someone's waiting for you and just knee, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's kind of like, because I'm doing, a bit of cross training for my MMA, and with the wrestling, they have their head really low, their hips are back because all they're caring about is their hips being back. But our gym was like saying, look, while he was a traditional wrestler, we're doing wrestling for MMA, so you've got to have your head a bit more because you can get knee to the head. So it's you've got to adapt to the rule set. So I think at the time when you fought, when there's no knees, all you can do is punch and obviously take down. You could do a throw from that distance. But I think adding the knees is going to add an extra element to the fights in Karate Combat.
There's no question. I think adding knees. You saw in the last Karate Combat with Bruno, the Brazilian guy, he was throwing knees to the head. Like it's anyone like me, Gabriel Varga, Ross Levine, these guys that have kickboxing backgrounds who throw knees all the time. So and the next thing that I think that they'll add is low kicks as well, because traditionally in karate you can't kick between the hip and the knee. But I think you can throw calf kicks, so it's kind of like
But
might as well throw low kicks.
If they do that, what's the difference between Karate Combat and Muay Thai?
Well, I don't know. See, this is the thing that they have to work out.
The throws.
The throws, the hip throws. So Muay Thai, you can't hip throw. You can sweep, but it has to be like a foot sweep. You can't throw it. You can't hook behind the knee and throw over your hip or anything like that.
But then once you swept them, you let
In Thai boxing,
Yeah.
and kickboxing, there's no ground and pound. So yeah.
Whereas you got, I mean, you can't mount them, but you can still 5 seconds. If they're not, you can knock them out. You can take it down and knock them out. Especially if as you're throwing them, they're still kind of break falling or something.
Do you think the distance will change? Because at the moment, the difference in the distance between Muay Thai and karate combat is because there's no knees.
Yeah.
So do you think adding the knees will bring them in a little closer?
I don't know. I think you're talking about guys who have traditionally fought in
Karate
the WKF who like to fight at longer distances. Like I'm the same. I like to fight at longer distances because it's all I've ever done with karate and taekwondo is fight at that distance. And then I went to Glory and I fought there. And one thing that really struck me was how comfortable everyone is, kickboxers, in that kind of in the pocket, and how uncomfortable I was.
Yeah, I've been finding that too.
Well, you've got all the throws behind you, Leon. I was never much of a throw takedown kind of guy. I was always a striker. So I had to, I spent a lot of time post that sort of 2019, 2020 time, coincided with COVID and the shutdown. So I could spend time working on that. But I spent a lot of time focusing on boxing in the pocket just to be comfortable at having stuff come back at you and moving out the way without pulling the head back. And that's one of the things I think in some of the earlier karate combat fights, you see a lot of the guys.
Yeah. Well, they didn't at the start, they didn't allow hooks for the first season or two. So that really changed the way people fought. Obviously, allowing those hooks and just round punches, I guess.
So were you training with the idea of fighting karate combat?
Well, I'd always seen that, and I identify as a karateka. Like it was my formative years in martial arts was karate, and I'd always kind of paid attention to it in the background. And I had a lot of people say to me, over the years, "Oh, you should do karate combat," because the guys in kickboxing and Muay Thai, they don't. If you come from a karate background, like you watch me fight as a kickboxer, I look like a kickboxer, but I definitely don't look like a kickboxer at the same time. I look like I've done something else.
You can tell.
And so people would always say to me, "Oh, you should do karate combat." Yeah, it's just the way that you control the distance a lot better.
Like the same dish, but it's different flavor. You just move a bit differently.
Yeah. Well, like I said, when I started kickboxing and Muay Thai, I was pretty much. If I was punching, you could tell I'd either punch or I'd kick, because if I was punching, my hands would be up, and if I was kicking, my hands would be down, from like the taekwondo kind of thing. And you could tell what I was doing because of it. So I had to learn a lot of things, like different ways to kind of disguise it. And now my style's kind of blended into like this kickboxing, Muay Thai, karate, taekwondo kind of hybrid. That's become very effective because the guys that I fight don't necessarily have that experience.
More purist in individual things.
You look at when Lyoto Machida got into UFC, nobody could fight him because of the distance was different, the kicks were different,
they had a time and that style.
Yeah, like in karate, we do so much anticipating as a person comes. There's not.
Well, that's a great point. One thing that I've really learned in the last maybe 5 or so years with kickboxing and Muay Thai is that being a counter fighter or being an aggressive fighter is okay, but you win fights with that anticipation timing. If someone comes in and you hit them with 2 or 3 shots on the way in and then move and reset and just do that over and over again, they don't know how to read it. They're just not used to it. And that's where I've had a lot of success is literally just doing that, hitting people on the way in and then moving, and you just frustrate them, And
then they do something silly and then bang, it's all.
And then they start charging, then they start running at you, trying to throw overhands, and it's just that's when they open up. So.
And then it's our straight punches in karate when they start doing those big swings.
Exactly.
So just back to what we were talking about before. You were saying, so a lot of those guys were telling you, "Oh, you should do a karate combat fight," because obviously those are your roots. How did that then pan out? Like, did you call them?
No, so there's scouts. Karate combat have a number of scouts that identify talents or whatever, and I was got in contact. I can't remember how I got in contact with a guy called Andres Vaz, who did a bit of work with the AKF a while back, probably going back 10 years now. So we ended up just having a chat, and he knew all of the same people that I knew from, you know, my time. So we really, you know, had this fruitful discussion.
Yeah.
And he was like, look, you know, we'd be really interested, you know, if you wanted to fight Karate Combat. And he was like, yeah, totally. Like, you know, let's tee it up. The first offer to fight I had was at the start of this year. They called me up like in January and said basically, look, can you get to Budapest in 2 weeks? We're going to do this pre-recorded show. And I was like, oh, look, I was like, it just come off Christmas. It was my son's birthday in a couple of days. I was like, look, probably not happening right now. But if anything else comes up, please let me know. And if there's more time, I'll definitely do it. And then Andres got back in touch with me about April after I'd just gone to Melbourne and had a kickboxing fight. And he said, look, we're having this show in June, sometime in June. We really want you to, you know, fight on it if you can. It's going to be a live show. We're moving away from the pre-recorded show model. We're going to go into this kind of live format. And, you know, would you be keen? And I was like, yep. So everything sort of aligned for that. And then, but yeah, to answer your question, there's talent scouts that identify talents in various regions that have their ear to the ground. And Andres was a guy that has his ear to the ground in kind of this region that we're in.
Yeah.
There's another guy called Thomas Greer who I also spoke with briefly as well, but he's more I think in the American talent pool. But yeah, they have people that look around and identify. Now in the day of social media, you can quickly identify guys with karate background or girls with karate background that are you know, climbing their way up the rankings. And to be honest with you, in the last sort of year or so, Karate Combat have signed some really, really, really big talents. You know, guys like Gabriel Varga, who is a legend in the kickboxing world, like Glory champion, Bellator champion, you know, and these are big promotions. And I think he's 37 now, so he's kind of gone away from his, you know, that level and gone into Karate Combat to try something different for a few years. So another exploring guy. Sorry.
There's a lot of interest. I know Wonder Boy's even talking about you know, I'm a bit of a fan of Wonder Boy, and I try and emulate his style a little bit. And like he was commentating your fight, and so I was like, oh, and now he's talking about, maybe I think once his contract
he'll do it.
The UFC, he'll do it for him. Yeah,
I'm sure he's already training for it.
Yeah, and he'll do well in it as well.
That was my question for you is, obviously you've done karate for a long time when you're younger, but then, you know, you're doing taekwondo and kickboxing. When you knew that the fight was happening in, you know, June, July, you told him April, what kind of things did you do training wise to kind of prepare yourself, say, for, you know, the different rule set where you can actually take that leg and throw, you know, the body kick and those kind of, you know, throws and stuff that are a bit different. Was there anything you did?
Yeah, so let me give you a bit of background. The first, so I was told in sort of April, May that I'm, you know, potentially fighting. Then we set a date, found out where it was going to be. Then they told me about maybe 6 or 8 weeks before that I had a matchup. It was all agreed. I was meant to fight this guy called Lazar Kulicic, who's from Macedonia, I think. I hope I haven't got that wrong. Maybe Montenegro. Sorry, Lazar, if you're listening. But there was an issue with his visa getting processed. So
is that what happened? Because I know they changed your fight at the last minute.
Yeah.
I didn't know why.
Well, so and then so I had this lined up with Lazar, and then about 4 weeks before, it looked like he wasn't going to get a visa for whatever reason. So they tried to find me another opponent. It took them a couple of weeks. They eventually found this guy from Florida, a local, and then he agreed to the fight. And then 2 days later, he got COVID. This is about a week and a half before the fight was supposed to be on. Mind you, in this time, like my family and my dad, my sister, my fiance, my son, my mum, we'd all booked flights for us to go over. They'd all booked flights because I wanted my dad to be there as well, because, you know, he used to come to all my taekwondo and karate comps, and, you know, it was just like, it was a nice little time. But anyway, so it got to the point where the Saturday, so the flight, I was meant to fly out on the Monday about 5 days before, and it got to the Saturday morning, and they finally found a third opponent for me, and we agreed and locked it in, and so everything was good. But so with that context in mind, I started training to fight this Lazar, who was, I think he's had a couple of MMA fights, but very heavy on the throws, on the hip throws, like you can't double leg takedown, but people still do it. He did it anyway. He's got the video of him taking the guy and climbing up the pit wall. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but I can send you that video. He does this like really cool takedown where he steps off the pit wall and uses it to his advantage. So I spent a lot of time with our kickboxing gym has a jiu-jitsu arm or an MMA arm as well. So I spent a lot of time training 3 nights a week with a guy called Mark O'Callaghan and a couple of the boys, the MMA boys, and Lazar was actually a southpaw as well. And these 2 boys are about 68 kilos. They're both southpaws and they're both really good at takedowns. So I spent a lot of time drilling with them, just learning how not to get taken down. I wasn't going to become, in 6 weeks, I wasn't going to become competent at doing takedowns myself. But you can learn how to get your hips back. You can learn how. Yeah, and that was the key, because I knew in a striking fight, I'm all over him. But if I get taken down, then it's an even. So it was about kind of stifling that. Then lo and behold, the opponent changes, so I had to start focusing on another thing, and then back to a southpaw. So while all of this was happening, for me, it was like, I'm focusing on all of these things, and then I just sort of said to myself, look, I don't care who I'm fighting. I don't care whether they're southpaw, orthodox, whether they're good at throws, whatever. It's too late now. I'm just going to focus on training, what I'm good at, and imposing my style of fighting on them, and not the other way around.
What are your strengths?
So obviously I've done karate for 25 years. I spent a lot of time at high level taekwondo, so I've got really good kicks, really good hip dexterity, really good flexibility. And I spent a lot of time kickboxing and doing Muay Thai. So I've got good boxing skills. So I know that, controlling the distance is one of my major strengths. And that's how I impose my style of fighting on people. I don't let them get in close. I keep them away. But when I want to impose myself, I get in and I land my shots, and I'm very frustrating. I hit and move, and I'm not there to be hit. And I kick. In my fight, you can see with Alberto, I was doing that thing where you move out of the clinch and you kick straight away. Yeah. And just doing those sorts of things, just constant volume, kicking from different angles, attacking from different angles. Those are my kind of strengths.
Were you doing that when you were doing Muay Thai fights or kickboxing fights as well?
Yeah, totally. So in those kind of style of fighting, everyone's very square on as well. So a lot of the time you can do turning back kicks and things, and really
the body's a bigger target.
The body's always open.
Karate's a bit more side on.
You're side on, yeah, totally. But then because you're side on, you're open to the leg sweep. So the guy I was fighting was a traditional karate player, and he was kind of side on. And so I did this 360, and I was going to kick him in the head, but I saw that the leg was open, so I went for a nice calf kick takedown, and it worked.
Yeah, I saw that. That was good.
Yeah, so look, it was just, people will leave themselves open depending on what style of fight. Every style of fighting has a weakness and a strength, and you just have to know where those are.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the guy that I fought, he's had 3 fights in karate combat. I watched his first one, and from the first to the second to the third, he's got a lot better, and he hit quite hard in that fight, but I hit him hard and I think in the first round, I hit him with a straight right, and I could see, his leg wobble, and I knew from there that I just needed to get my hands on him and just hit him. And that was kind of, he got a couple of takedowns when I tried kicking, because what was happening as well is he was a southpaw. So being a southpaw, he's open to the head kick from the right-hand side, and especially because he was ducking into it. And I was trying to throw that kick sort of to the neck, chest area, hoping that he'd duck in.
Okay, yeah.
And it just wasn't working. He was just taking it down. So then after that, I either went low or I either went high, because I was going to the body in the hope that he would kind of duck in and I'd land a flush one on the neck.
Don't give away all your secrets.
Yeah, no, I was shouting through the computer I was watching it with Ben Candy. I was talking to him on the phone. I was shouting. I was shouting through the computer. I was like, "Stop throwing the body kick! Stop throwing the body kick!" Because he was grabbing it and throwing.
And,
So I
look,
just thought it was because you heard me, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. But no, so they, they said to us, the way that these shows work, and it was the same with Glory as well, is you have a rules meeting and they tell you what to expect, what the judges are looking for, and that sort of thing.
That's good, yeah.
And look, they said that, look, the takedowns are only effective if there's an effective strike afterwards. It's no use just taking someone, And so a lot of the work that we were doing previously was if I was in a position to get taken down, wrap up the arms and stifle it or turn it, alligator roll kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then obviously, yes, if they are standing up, then just get your hips up and kind of kick them away.
Yeah.
And so I got taken down a couple of times, but there were no effective strikes.
Making sure that they're not actually hitting you after the takedown.
It's not a purpose. It's not a fruitful. But then I listened back to the commentary, and they, so there's a disconnect between what the commentators are watching and what the judges are watching. And sometimes I think if you're watching it from home, you can get swayed by what the commentators are saying, but they're not necessarily, as in tune as the judges.
They're not referees.
Well,
so it's kind of like in everything else in UFC and like where they might call something, but it's not.
They didn't go to the rules meeting.
Yeah, they didn't go to the rules meeting.
Well, yeah, exactly. They're conspicuously absent. But no, so what I really liked about Karate Combat was that, and they have this mechanism where if at the end of 3 rounds, the majority of judges agree that they want to see a 4th round, they tick a box, and then you go into a 4th round. So it doesn't have to be like the stars align where it's a draw.
It doesn't have to be a flat.
The judges can just say, "Oh, I want more," so they tick a box and you get a 4th round.
Right. I actually didn't know. I didn't know that. I just thought if it was even points, whatever, like 30, 30, 30, or whatever.
Yeah. So I think if there's there's 3 judges, and I think if 2 of them say that they want a 4th round, then it goes to a 4th round.
That's
which I spent a lot of time working on my fitness, and literally in the April kickboxing fight that I'd had, that was a 5 by 3 minute round kickboxing fight. Perfect. So I'd just come from this like 5 3-minute rounds. I was very fit, and at the end of the 3rd, when they said it might be going to a 4th, I looked over and I saw my opponent was gassed out, and that's when I was like, "Yep, all right, here we go."
I gotta say, I reckon you looked better in the 4th round than
it's always in my AKF days.
Yeah.
In my AKF days, right? Me and my dad used to have this joke where like it would happen all the time in South Australia, and often at the national level as well, is that I'd either lose my 1st round or I'd go on to win the whole thing. Like I'd have this kind of, or I'd get to the final. Like I'd have this thing where I was terrible in the first fight, sloppy. I didn't know my distance, always sluggish. But once I'd had one fight, and the momentum was going, I just felt really good. And so this is what this fight was like. It's just like a little microcosm of that, where the 1st round I was slow, the distance wasn't quite right. Went back to the corner and I was like, right, here we go. And then I started to feel good. And then by the 4th round, everything was just working, and I had another 5 rounds.
Why they call you, and it's the package, because you're thinking as well as fighting, right?
That's it. You have to be able to think, and you have to be able to, there's times for thinking and there's times for doing, but
good looks, good fit body, good fighter. And
I don't know what my fiance would say.
We don't want to know why your fiance thinks of a package.
I did see your Instagram with fiance taking what do you call it? A cutout.
Cardboard cutout.
Yeah, of you around everywhere.
Pause with me for 1 second, all right?
That's cool. We'll talk. Have you seen it?
No.
There it is.
Oh, that's the cardboard cutout.
That's it. She took it around at her hen's night.
You can't see it, can you?
No, it flipped up for a bit, but
it's a camera.
Yes.
It's
there we
go. There you go. Huh?
Oh.
Who's this good looking man?
Is that Photoshop? You look ripped.
Yeah.
No.
Look, isn't it my body in your face?
I made them add an extra couple of abs in there. So
like 20 abs there.
Yeah. No, yeah. So she had a hen's night on the weekend, so she took that out with her everywhere. So
Nice one.
Well, how
Nice
did
one.
you get the name The Package? Is it
Oh,
or
no. So a friend of mine, a guy who I train with, he just started calling me the package one day because you know, I have a PhD, and you know, I don't know. I was just doing a lot of things that I think had, you know, were unfamiliar to a lot of people, and people were like, "Where do you get the time to do all of that?" And so yeah, just that's how it came about. It's got nothing to do with underwear size, or does it? Maybe it does. I don't know.
I thought, yeah, I thought it was because you did, originally I thought it was, because you did so many different styles, you know,
Well,
coming
I
through.
think that's it.
So-
Yeah. So you know, I'm a black belt in karate and Shotokan karate. I'm a third dan black belt in taekwondo as well. Um, you know, I've got a doctorate. I play piano. Like all these things that, you know, are sort of foreign to people. And
so I'm just making everybody feel bad about themselves. Thanks, mate.
yeah,
Well,
sorry.
back to your taekwondo with your third dan there.
Yeah.
Do you think taekwondo will evolve into something like karate combat? Do you reckon they'll have a taekwondo?
I genuinely think so because I mean, we were talking about this off air before, but the way that taekwondo has morphed over the last sort of 15 years away from a spectator friendly sport like it was at the pinnacle in sort of 2008 Beijing Olympics. If anyone wants to see what taekwondo is about, go watch the 2008 Beijing Olympics. Don't watch what you see now in the Olympics. It's just they've moved away from judges actually scoring and it being a kind of meritocracy of who's a better fighter to now who's taller, who's got better hip dexterity, who's more flexible, you know, that sort of thing. And I think people are starting to get frustrated by it a little bit, to be honest. I mean, I definitely, that's the reason why I fell out of love with the sport, was because it completely, it was not fighting to me anymore. And I think, honestly, the next logical answer for taekwondo is a full contact taekwondo competition.
Well, that's what taekwondo was used to be. When I grew up as a kid, taekwondo was full contact. You had the headgear on, but you could, if you knocked them out, you won.
That was it. And I mean, those rules still apply. And when I started taekwondo, you did see knockouts. Now you don't see knockouts. No one gets knocked out anymore because they just don't hit hard enough, because there's no value in kicking hard. Now it's all about
it's a waste.
The sensors at the bottom of your foot, you know, and doing these kind of cut kicks, because that is more likely to score than kicking as hard as you can and potentially kicking someone in the elbow, breaking your foot.
And
when I started taekwondo,
kick them hard. So
do you think
it doesn't matter?
Do you think we will see some guys with a taekwondo background come into karate combat as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, so there's a guy called Damien Villa who is in the bantamweight division. I think he's 58 or maybe 63. I'm not sure. He's got a taekwondo background, and you can see that.
Yeah.
And he fought on, I think, maybe episode 3 of season 4. He fought. Who did he fight? Gabriel Stankunas, who's a Brazilian guy, and you could see that Damien was comfortable kicking, but same sort of thing, you know, they get in close, and because taekwondo you don't do a lot of punching. When people start punching you in the face, because it's not, you know, it's banned in taekwondo in WTF, you see that kind of discomfort and then trying to pull their head away and trying to avoid it. So I think if Damien works on that, he's definitely got the kicks. But also there's a guy called Raymond Daniels who fought recently on there as well. He's been around the world. He was on Bellator, Glory even too. I think he fought Bazooka Joe and Glory. He's got great taekwondo style kicks, but I don't actually know if he's a traditional taekwondo guy. But yeah, in answer to your question, I do expect that guys from my generation of taekwondo will probably come through. I'm not so sure about the newer generation, to be honest.
And just with the taekwondo, like we were talking a bit, I think it was off air, about using techniques, you know, that are unusual, I guess, to that style. So, you know, obviously when you've done a couple of different styles, say like in Muay Thai, they don't have the hook kick, so they're kind of, they're used to seeing that. Like you were talking about, the distance is different. I guess what from the styles that you've done, what technique, say from each style, do you find that you can kind of use as a secret technique, as a trick technique or something that, well, is there anything that you'll say the spinning back kick a bit more against in Muay Thai because they're more flat on?
Yeah, so I mean, the one thing that I've taken from karate, the main thing is that kind of gyakuzuki anticipation, reverse punch timing, as they come in, bang, hit them. And you can turn it into an overhand, add a body shot onto it. You could turn it into an elbow if you're in Muay Thai, but that kind of anticipation style timing is crucial. But that said, in karate combat, most people come from that background. So, everyone's, there's no real advantage there. Or maybe there is. In Taekwondo, the main things that I've taken are just the hip dexterity, the turning back kicks, like spinning kicks to the head. And the timing on those kicks is exactly the same as the timing on the gyakuzuki. It's as soon as you see them move, bang, and they're already committed to their shot, so they get hit. I've found that works so well in Muay Thai and kickboxing because, one, it's an unfamiliar technique, and the only people that do it, or people that try to do it, are honestly just terrible. Unless they've done Taekwondo before. The guys that try and do it just the timing's not there, the technique's not there, it just looks poor, and they do. So I guess, like I said, there's benefits and techniques that score in different scenarios. But then that said, kickboxing, Muay Thai, those knees to the head, the timing on the knees is like massive. So I can imagine, like we were saying off air, the knees has taken out that ability for people to shoot now. People are going to be wary about potentially.
You really got it. It's a massive risk. It's a massive risk to shoot.
Yeah, and all you got to do is throw one early on, and no one's going to shoot on you after that, because
that mindset changes.
So now that there's the knees been put in, are we going to see you trying to get another karate combat fight soon?
When is your next karate combat fight?
What's the deal with that?
So what happened with karate combat was that I had a bunch of other fights lined up for the rest of this year, and so I said to them, look, like I really want to fight in karate combat, but I've agreed to these other fights, and I have every intention of honoring those fights. And so we worked out this kind of pre-fight deal where if I'd have this kind of contract fight. If I won that fight, then we'd discuss future fights, but that wouldn't happen until kind of next year. So I know that karate combat are particularly interested, and I'm interested in fighting on there. But like I said, I had other fights lined up. I'm getting married in November as well. So I said to them, look, I've got stuff on for this year, and I have no intention of agreeing to any fights after November. So in answer to your question, next year I'm really hoping to get back on there. And yes, I will be throwing knees. I'll be throwing jumping knees, spinning jumping knees, spinning jumping axe kicks. I don't know.
Great. Look forward to it.
Well, what we'll do is we'll do a preview to your fight, and then we'll do a review as well with you.
All right, that'd be good. Yeah, that'd be really good.
We can sit down.
I'll tell you what I'm expecting.
Yeah. Give us a second round knockout predictions, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
You won't give too much away to your opponent. But
and who knows? By then we might be like fully sponsored.
Yeah, hopefully.
We might be like Joe Rogan.
Hopefully we'll have something going on.
Who knows?
It's a while away, but yeah, hopefully this keeps kicking on.
Cool.
Yeah, but it's been absolutely fantastic getting some perspective from an athlete that's fought in there and catch up with you anyway, Matty.
Well, Matty, where do we find you, mate? Are you on Instagram? Obviously.
Yep. So you can find me on Instagram at Matty Stevs, MATTYSTEVZ or Z. That's pretty much my main channel for promotion and things like that. And listen, guys, really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you both. Great seeing you again, Leon. It's been how long? Probably over 10 years since we've seen each other. Yeah. Good to see you doing well. Shane.
Leon looks the same, mate, 10 years ago.
Don't say that.
There's only a year difference.
He looks old.
Oh,
He's older.
Yeah. No, so yeah, no, honestly, it's really a pleasure to chat with you guys, and it's a pleasure. It's an honor to be the inaugural guest. It's an honor to be the. I feel bad being the first Australian to fight on Karate Combat when you've got guys like yourself, Leon, and guys like Sonari. But you know, that's the way that the rubber the green sometimes, and I'm just glad I won. You know,
Yep, me
'cause-
too, man. Me too. So no, I think you did Australia proud. I mean, obviously when you're going to fight, you know, you're fighting for yourself first. But you know,
you're carrying a lot of weight on your shoulders, and look, I have
people watching, and you know, you did us proud. So
I really appreciate it. Look, like I said, you know, I wouldn't have got to Karate Combat if it wasn't for my time in the AKF, competing against and losing ultimately to guys like you, Leon. And you know, but I had to go and explore and find different martial arts and try and add different strengths to my bow. And eventually, you know, it all ended up with me in Karate Combat. And I still have fond memories of the AKF, and I have a lot of friends there. Like I chat with you privately as well, Leon. And heaps of the old Melbourne boys like Ben Candy and Sergi, and chat with Scenario all the time as well. So, you know, look, I've still got heaps of friends and contacts in the AKF, and that were all, you know, genuinely supportive, and it feels good to be, you know, still connected to the community and to ultimately win and feel like I did you guys proud. You know, that's the key.
you did great.
Yeah,
So
awesome, man.
best of luck with your two fights later this year.
For the wedding,
Well, I have had one. Well, I actually had three fights in one night. I had an eight man tournament.
right.
That was kickboxing in Melbourne in August. And yeah, I'm meant to fight in a couple of weeks again in Melbourne for a world title. So, and then I'm getting married a few weeks after that. So, yeah. So.
Okay.
What's bigger, the world title or the wedding? Ooh.
Well, yeah. So my missus is in the kitchen, so I'll have to say the wedding.
We'll leave that one
The wedding's
You'll get more big.
She told me I wasn't allowed to. She made a firm rule that I wasn't allowed to fight within 4 weeks of the wedding because I wasn't allowed to have a black eye or an injury. So I think that's sensible.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, we keep in touch, and hopefully, like Cheyne said, we can get an interview pre and post your fight next year for Karate Combat. That'd be fantastic.
Totally, mate. I'm here anytime you want to chat. Happy to join you. Happy to promote and share as much as possible. I think it's a good thing that you guys are doing. So
thanks a lot. Do you want us to wrap up what we are on the socials?
Yeah, we are on Instagram. Is probably the biggest one as well. We've got a YouTube channel, Facebook.
The Karate Combat Show.
The Karate Combat Show. That's it, because it is the Karate Combat Show, because there's no other Karate Combat Show. Yeah, cool.
All right, sweet, Matty. I'll just we'll talk to you soon.
See you, mate.
See you, mate.